are live. So today we have an amazing panel on first customer programs. We have some great companies represented here. We have Johnson & Johnson, we have Bayer, and we have Philips. So I'm going to start off with a very quick introduction of our panelists today. And if you're just joining, we're going to be talking about first customer programs across companies like Johnson & Johnson, Bayer, and Philips. Actually, let me introduce our panelists. So we have Michal Preminger from Johnson & Johnson Innovation. We have Priscilla Beal from Bayer. And we have Beth Navarra-Sirio from Philips. So I think let's start off maybe by introducing each of your programs, especially your first customer programs, and how you found those programs to be valuable for your company as well as for the companies that you're partnering with or external partners, because as we'll talk about, it doesn't always have to be external companies. So maybe Michal, we'll start with you, and maybe if you can start with a brief introduction of your program, and we can take it from there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Neil. And it's great to be here with Priscilla, Beth, and everyone else out there on the platform. At Johnson & Johnson, we build our success on innovation. We are one of the largest healthcare companies in the world, and a very diverse one, with innovation happening across consumer health, med devices, and pharmaceuticals, as well as digital technology and data science. And we, as I said, we have built our success on innovation, both internal and external. And as we engage with the external community, we look to consider what the needs are for first-time innovators or just early-stage innovation, whether it's emerging from academia or in startups. And mostly in this very complex environment of healthcare, the needs are some kind of combination of access to expertise in the complex areas like regulatory, manufacturing scale-up, preclinical and clinical development, supply chain, which we've all become expert on, hunting toilet paper these days, but is very important in this complicated environment, reimbursement, things like that. So this is one, this access to expertise and the ability to embrace opportunities that the science offers that a small company cannot do in its own. The others are incubation space, lab space, and capital. And so mirroring those needs, we created a pretty broad proposition that is extremely flexible, that includes all of those components. So a company can go into our plug-in lab space or desk space through our JLabs incubators that are located in important locations around the world. On the East Coast, we have one in DC in collaboration with BARDA and Children's Hospital. We have one in New York, in Boston, Toronto, and all over the world. The other element is access to R&D collaboration. So we have a Johnson & Johnson Innovation offers this kind of easy inlet into the humongous organization that is Johnson & Johnson, and can connect innovators to the right R&D team and define and shape and then execute on different types of collaborations that can accelerate development. And then access, and that can provide also, of course, non-dilutive funding. And finally, for those who are looking for equity investments, our corporate venture fund, JJDC, offers investments. All of those come with a very large internal network of mentors that we call JPALs, and with a lot of attention to, what early innovators need. I personally spent my entire career on the early innovation side, and our team is very tuned to not only the kind of hard needs, but also the mindset and the struggles that people who just start their companies and are looking for that first partnership may be worried about. The value that this creates for J&J, of course, is in eventually feeding the pipelines, but going early into those relationships. And by the way, they range in terms of how much strings are attached. So our JLabs, for example, have no strings attached. So companies can come in and be in our space and benefit from the programs and the mentorship, but they do not need to give us any option or rights to those R&D collaborations and equity which come with the appropriate strings. What we have found is that by being close to companies early on, we can get to know them and they can get to know us, and we can actually develop together programs that are just not possible for each one to do separately. So we may bring to an early company that has built its program based on what was available. I mean, if it's coming out of academia and it's a potential new drug, then it was probably tested in the model that was available to that lab. And there may be a bigger unmet need with patients that can be satisfied by bringing our own expertise in a different disease and our development capability and the market access. So we think we can do greater things together. And we also learn about emerging science, and that allows us to shape our own strategy and foresee what is coming in the future that we can enable. If I have more time, I can give one quick example, but I
Yes, an
also want to be
example.
respectful. So
Sure, an example would be great.
one example, we just launched a few months ago TrueMatch. It's a TrueMatch, a graft for long bone fractures through our medical device business. This emerged from work in a university that was focused on a biomaterial that enabled recruitment of stem cells in the bone. What we were able to do together we supported the launch of a new company that was focused on this. And together we identified that the technology would be a great fit with long bone fractures where there's a gap that needs to be filled. And today is filled randomly, but it could be guided and personalized. And what we were able to do is launch a platform that actually has a personalized 3D printed cage that is matched for the particular fracture of that particular patient. This is a huge undertaking because it's a new business model, it's a new supply chain approach, requires both the expertise in 3D printing, but also the power of a big company that can bring something so revolutionary to market. And for the young company, I think what beyond, of course, the reward of going into an area with a clear unmet need that was defined based on our experience, it, of course, accelerated their development. Initially, the collaboration enabled them to raise more money. Eventually, we actually acquired the company and brought the product to market. This is the type of collaboration in which the emerging science created a possibility that was not available to us internally. Our big platform, our reach, our understanding of the market, regulatory reimbursement, and creating the supply chain opportunity and the business model would have been very, very difficult for a young company to do on its own. So we're very proud to bring this innovation, and we try to do the same in a variety of fields.
That's a great example because it shows the full kind of spectrum from start to finish. Priscilla, maybe you can give a brief introduction of your program.
Sure, happy to. Hi, everybody. Priscilla Beal. I work on the technology prospecting team for Bayer or Bayer, depending on where in the world you're located. Before I jump into what we do, I think it's important to give a context of what Bayer does from an innovation perspective. And the way I simplify it is basically into three different ways. We have the large kind of venture arm of the organization called LEAPS, which you may have seen in the news already because as of 2016, and especially the past 5 acquisitions just in the last, I would say, as many months, LEAPS as an organization has invested, some significant funds in some startups and some established companies, and then also some portfolio companies in and of themselves to basically contribute to what is now a 30 plus member portfolio for the Bayer venture initiatives. The second way that Bayer does innovation is specifically within the division. So crop science, consumer health, and pharmaceutical health. And those are innovation agents that are looking at whether it's in the commercial space, whether it's in the clinical trial space, whether it's in at shelf, delighting the consumer, technology implications in partnership with IT. How can we engage with external partners? If it's entrepreneurial, how can we incentivize entrepreneurship within the organization to come up with things like, process improvements, et cetera? But those are looking at things that are basically commercializable or scalable within 6, 12, maximum 24 months. The third way we do it is through technology prospecting, which basically picks up where those divisions leave off. And we are looking at external partners, specifically in the emerging technology space, that aren't yet commercializable, nor will they be in the next 3, 5, and in the case of quantum computing, for example, even 10 years out. And so what we're looking to do is basically identify those technologies, become savvy in them so that Bayer as an organization now has institutional knowledge of these emerging technologies. And we can do what we call prototyping, which is basically taking something to concept so that we can then get a division to co-create with us on a prototype or some sort of in-market study. And to get to the point of kind of the customer focus and the customer first subject of this panel, the way that all of those innovation groups work together is toward this common goal of the need of the customer, the consumer, the patient, the farmer, the agronomist, the research scientist. And I'm sure we'll all get to talking to that through Neil's great questions after introductions. But at the end of the day, none of those 3 different types of innovations would be successful if we weren't putting need before technology. So one of the things that we really focus on doing is identifying, through patient panels, through, the human-centered design process in some cases, and through, market safaris, as I call them, going in and talking to the people who are going to be the recipients or consumers or users of the product solutions and experiences that Bayer produces, no matter where they fall in that sort of 3 siloed organizational structure, if you will, that it's all based on the need that we're meeting and where emerging technology and that need intersect is where we invest our funding and our resources and our efforts.
Fascinating. Well, Mary Beth, now it's your turn.
Great. Thanks so much for having us, Neil. I'm Mary Beth Navarra-Sirio, and I work for Philips Healthcare. I'm proud to say that we're in walking distance from the CSL building right down in Oakland, though not today, but in a normal work day. We go back and forth quite a bit and are very fortunate to have the close collaboration with the CSL that we have today. So thanks to Sean and Dave Mawhinney and you and all at CMU and especially the CSL. So Philips Healthcare has a specific strategy around innovating with a purpose. We're striving to improve both the health of the world as well as the sustainability of the world and have a goal to touch 3 billion people's lives by 2030, including 400 million in underserved healthcare communities, helping to make healthcare more accessible as well as more affordable, and of course, to help improve health outcomes globally. We have many different opportunities, much like Priscilla described, for working with startups within Philips. We have a corporate venture fund that does engage with and make investments in early stage companies, usually those that are already on the commercial side. We have several programs that are healthcare accelerator type programs, Philips HealthWorks, and a program that I'll talk about here in just a second. And then we also have at the business level the opportunity to engage with startups and understand how we can bring innovative technology into our portfolio, either for testing and understanding or potentially for developing partnerships or licensing agreements. So, Neil, you asked the question about how we do the first customer programs. And I guess I would say we can really do it through any of those options that I just described. But let me give you a specific example. Last year, we ran a cohort of 12 startups through our accelerator program, which I led. We actually brought the group over to the CSL to learn from the experts there. But our goal was really to say, all right, for these 12 startups in a particular field, what can you learn from Philips and what can Philips learn from you? So we always create something, I think, that is a framework for kind of what's in it for us and what's in it for the startup. And I think for us in that program, out of the 12 companies in that program, 3 of them ended up doing first customer tech programs with us. And they were very much exploratory on our part. We were really trying to understand a little bit better how to engage with certain types of technology. One of them was in the patient engagement space. The company was about a 8-person company who was really trying to understand kind of, what does that even mean from a healthcare consumer's perspective? What is patient engagement? We were able to bring a team of experts, including one of our behavioral psychologists, to the table to define a development program. We paid for that program. And I think, in a first customer program with the startup, the corporate partner should be paying expenses and paying for those types of programs. We did a joint development. We designed the outcomes and the test of those outcomes jointly. They developed We tested and, we all learned, I think, a lot from that program. So that's just one example. One of the other companies in that cohort, we ended up also doing a program, a first customer program with, and we're still engaged as a customer with them today, which is really kind of cool, a cool result from the program.
Interesting. So a related question based on something all of you talked about. So you're all in industries that have, well, one, it's truly a matter of life and death in a lot of the projects and startups and technologies that you're working with. There's also a lot of regulation in the industries that you're working with. So how do you balance that sort of need for, clarity from a regulatory standpoint, that need for precision from a technology standpoint, because the high stakes involved? How do you balance that with trying to move quickly and innovating? And yeah, if you can talk a little bit about that, that'll be great. So maybe Michal, we start with you, and then we kind of keep going back around in the same order.
Yeah. So actually, I think that one of the things that we are looking for in our external partnerships is learnings about new models and ways to, break current paradigms. As a company, we are very committed to the future of healthcare, focused on a patient-centric approach, which will harness everything that is needed in a patient journey. Our first example of that is the lung cancer initiative that basically maps the patient journey from from health to disease, and looks at every kind of transition point along their journey, and try to detect, intercept, and prevent if possible. So we have consumer products that are focused on smoking cessation or pollution. We have medical device approach for early detection that does bronchoscopy to biopsy and ablate small nodules. And then we have pharmaceutical approaches that try to prevent the transition from inflammation to cancer. And why am I giving this as an example? Because there is no regulatory approach or path right now for prevention. And but we are committed to try and change that. And so one of the ways to do it is by working internally and bring our expertise with, and the trust that we have with the regulators to have this dialogue. But we bring along with us external partners to join that journey. And we feel that there is this amazing synergy, right? That there are companies that are trying to push the boundaries in terms of what science can enable, but have these barriers. And investors many times will say, there's no way that you can take this to market because there is no regulatory path. By partnering with us, I think they get the credibility that maybe together we can actually have the right conversations and change the landscape, or alternatively choose a different regulatory path. So I'll give an example with one of our JLabs companies in Boston, which is a microbiome company, where we have chosen or enabled the company to adapt two different regulatory paths through collaboration with us. So one is the pharmaceutical approach. The other, which was not conceived initially, is a consumer approach where the regulatory path is very different. And we brought the expertise from both. And now the company has legs in both, with very different time to market and the opportunity for lower hanging fruit as well as kind of deeper impact. So maybe I'll stop here. I know we're going to run out of time, and we let others speak as well.
Sure. Priscilla, you want to go next?
Yeah, I don't have, I'll cheat a little and I'll say I don't have anything. I would have said everything that was just said. So I'll build on that. And I think probably not dissimilar to the two other fine women on the call right now and their organizations. I think the key here is inclusion and embracing things like legal, medical, and regulatory as part of the process. And it's actually one of the reasons that we have found in our external partnering, especially with startups, that they see as one of the benefits of working with a large organization. So we are really good at those things. We've been doing them for 100 and something years over here, 110 years, 160, 50 years, however long. And so we're really good at that scale and the process and the due diligence. And one of the things that's really exciting, especially when you think about health and digital farming, is that startups are able to really embrace this emerging technology at a speed with which large organizations like Bayer, for example, typically can't move. And so it's this wonderful symbiosis of having the agility and the knowledge of these startups with these, amazing niche ability to laser focus on a single algorithm or a single, Cas9 manipulation. Whereas when they come to us, we then have our aperture broadens, or it broadens their aperture anyway. And the application for that single algorithm is, can then be theoretically exponential. And the way that can be successful is by bringing in your legal and your medical and your regulatory very early on in the process, not just when you found that startup, but during the search process as well, so that you're basically leapfrogging over any kind of onboarding discussions you would have to have with, in this case, your regulatory partners, because they're already aware of the types of things at which you're looking. And they already have probably started to use their, amazing regulatory brains to figure out ways to work within the system, in a system that isn't typically used to working quickly or making considerations or thinking differently and pivoting at different kind of milestone points than they would with your traditional molecular innovation. And being able to leverage the process, but tweak it and move it, one side or the other of the swim lane in order to help enable you to reach the success that ultimately Bayer and the startup need to make, hand in hand with any sort of regulation that may or may not be in process.
Well, there was all of that was amazing, information. And I think there's a real nugget of advice in there for startups who are trying to engage with companies like yours, which is trying to get all the stakeholders involved kind of from the beginning, especially if you're carving out a new path, so that you don't throw something at them, when you think you're at the, 10-yard line or 5-yard line to closing the deal. But instead, now you realize you have this whole regulatory pathway to go figure out. So that's an incredible piece of advice for any startups in the audience as well. Mary Beth, do you want to give a little bit on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with what you just said. We also believe that there's a lot of value to startups engaging with us for those regulatory insights, but engaging early is really important. And sometimes it's a lot. So, for companies that want to participate in the medical device or pharma industry, unfortunately, it's also necessary, right? So, we try to be upfront about it. We start those processes. A great example for us recently was, we have a privacy officer, and in order for us to do any kind of interaction, even on the data side with another company, we have to go through a whole privacy assessment, and it's akin to a colonoscopy in some regards. But the startup then, I think, learns how to actually execute that type of analysis and is much more comfortable as they start to chart their own regulatory pathways. And, the same is true for 510K or for some of the other HIPAA types of analyses that have to be done in order to work with those types of companies.
Interesting. So I think we only have a few minutes left actually in the panel. So I do want to make sure we get to this question because it's very near and dear to my heart. So for any startups or researchers, or let's say folks who may want to collaborate with your company, would you please give an overview of one, what are the best ways for them to reach out to you or connect with you? 2, if there's particular research areas or problem areas that you are particularly focused on at the moment. And then 3, just any general advice for companies who want to collaborate with your business. What should they be, looking for? What should they make sure they have prepared before they start that process with you? So I know there's kind of 3 questions embedded in one there, but I think we can kind of start with that. And if we still have more time, I do have more questions, but let's go with those and see where we are. So Michal, maybe you can start.
Okay, sure. So I'll try to. So first, in terms of contacting us, I think that just recognizing that this may be somewhat of a diverse audience, not just from Pittsburgh, given that we're on Zoom. I'll say, go to our website, J&J Innovation, Johnson & Johnson Innovation, and you'll find a way to connect with us. And I promise we will direct you to the right hand based on your location and based on your interest. Then in terms of advice, let me start with advice that is a little bit generic and maybe less, based on my experience, it may, others may cover other things that are not that. So I will say that as an early, thinking about the first partnership, this may be a pretty critical event for the company. It may put it on track or derail it if it's the wrong partnership, because so much focus and so many of the very few resources that are available are going to go into this. So I will say consider whether this partnership is aligned with your vision for the company, whether the culture is aligned with the culture that you are looking for, to establish in your company, and if this partnership is going to enable your core mission or expand in a way that is in line with that core mission and create some exciting and important opportunities. Don't do this just for the money, because it may derail the company. The other thing that I will say is that you can think about, again, because it's such a critical event, think about the due diligence process as a mutual process. So this is true for partnership. It's true for, a strategic investment as well. So think about, what you need, of course, in parallel. Don't be overwhelmed by the fact that somebody is interested in your company. Think, is this the right partner? You can talk to other companies that may have gotten investment to the same portfolio or that are in collaboration. In today's world, it's very easy to reach out through LinkedIn and find those people and talk to them, see what, how this company or the partner enabled others, and consider in advance what you're going to ask out of this relationship based on this analysis that you do. Don't just be reactive to what the company, what your partner wants to do, but think what would be important for you. And at the same time, try to be humble and not oversell, be transparent about gaps and challenges that you have, because we're going to catch you anyway. I mean, our due diligence process is not going to miss anything. And so it's better to be upfront and work together. If there is interest, then our company will help fill those gaps. And if there's no fit, then we better find out before we get married and then be disappointed. And finally, in actually negotiating a structure and an agreement, I think it's important for young companies to consider exactly what they need. And I'll give just an example. So it's very fashionable now from investors to compel young companies to ask, for example, for co-commercialization rights. And if you're, developing something that goes into a big market, are you going to even be able to build a sales force to do something like this? So don't just feel compelled to ask for something because somebody put pressure on you. Just think about those things and form your own opinion and trust your judgment, and don't just let yourself be influenced by people who kind of supposed to know better. So these are a few thoughts, and I don't know if I answered all three questions, but I would like to leave time for Mary.
No, that was fantastic. That was like a masterclass just in that answer. I hope people were taking notes.
Thank you.
Priscilla, I would love to hear from you on this question.
So I'll start with the last one. So how you get in touch with us, depending on where you fall within the three funnels I mentioned at the beginning. So whether you're a large company looking for equity investment, whether you're a startup that's on or close to market looking for quick scale and commercialization, or whether you have kind of an idea, maybe not even a business plan, but you have an emerging technology. If you're the latter, LinkedIn me and I will help you out. If you are in either of the two former, then I strongly encourage you to go to buyer.com/innovation. And there you can learn about all the different ways that we are currently engaging in everything from open innovation to social innovation, employee innovation. If you're also looking for a job and you want to join and become an evangelist on behalf of Buyer for innovation, and then also in areas of research and development. as far as kind of building upon about what Michal said, she hit on a really important point, and I'm glad you picked up on it, Neil. It's not just what the technology, what the startup, what the entrepreneur, what the idea is that you're coming to speak with a company. It's having relevance and not just coming and saying, hey, I've got this cool algorithm. What can you do with it? It's knowing your audience and being able to actually come to them and show, this is why we should spend time together figuring out how to use my algorithm because it helps you in XYZ categories or therapeutic areas, etc. And then the other thing is not just have an idea about what you want, but also have an idea about what you don't want. So from personal experience, we've had open innovation challenges where we have been really excited about a company and we've wanted to make an equity investment or do an outright M&A purchase. And, one of the owners of the company wanted to sell and the other one didn't. And they didn't have that conversation until, after we had already begun basically an offer for that company. And so, just because we have the bright and shiny scalability and the funds to help you accelerate, make sure that culturally and emotionally, as it's your company that you're working for or on behalf of, what it is that you are willing to do and not to do, including, acquisition, M&A, or co-creation or white labeling, but also, do you want to change your business model to get that investment? Do you want to switch from animal health to people health or vice versa? Do you want to go from ag tech to incorporate some kind of telemedicine because that's what an organization sees the value of your technology being? And so really, I know it's hard, especially for, early stage startups. So maybe this is for the later stage startups more pointedly, but, have an understanding about what that threshold is for you, what your identity is, and what you're willing to be flexible on.
Another masterclass. I might have to go back and watch these, honestly. Mary Beth, I'd love to hear this from you as well.
Sure. So similarly, if you're looking for opportunities to engage with Philips Sleep and Respiratory Care, hit me up on LinkedIn. And we also have centers of excellence for innovation and technology all over the world. We've got 4 or 5 of them, one in Cambridge, Pittsburgh. We have one over in China, and we have one in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam and in Eindhoven. So plenty of opportunity to connect with us at Philips, and we're always happy to do that. Those other sites are on the website. And I guess to follow on a little bit to what Priscilla was saying, when we start to engage with the startup, I would encourage you not only to think about, what the value prop is and how it would fit into some of Philips' strategies. I'd also encourage you to put your best foot forward, because I think when we're looking at opportunities to partner with startups, the first question is, is value proposition, there for us? Does it fit? Is it a match? Where is the technology? And, early is fine, because we can always help to de-risk some of the assumptions. But the biggest thing that I've seen stop a deal dead is a team. So, you want to make sure you've got a solid team, that you take it seriously if you're going to engage with a big corporation, and that you're prepared beyond your A game. So that's probably my biggest advice as far as, something to really think about. Who are you bringing? Have you thought about all the questions? Have you gone through Priscilla's checklist, and are you able to engage in an honest dialogue around, what it is you want, and, hear from us what it is we might be able to deliver, and, is that a match? And if it's not, then, no harm, no foul, but, don't keep going down the path thinking that some of those things are likely to change.
And we only have about 30 seconds left, but Mary Beth, the follow-up question on that is, how do you filter that out? Like, how do you filter out companies in that process? Because I'm sure you get tons of inbound.
Yeah, it's tough. We do a lot of, desktop research first. We might start with an initial phone call or Zoom meeting. We probably go a couple steps before we would actually invite a team to come in and really have a exploratory conversation about what we might be able to do together.
Got it. So we are at our time limit. I feel like we could have been going for another 2 hours and we wouldn't have run out of questions. But well, I hope everybody enjoyed the panel. I think if you want to connect with any of these companies, they gave some great information on where to go do that. LinkedIn sounds like a great channel to connect with everyone. So if you do have an idea for them or a technology that applies, I'm sure they'd welcome you reaching out. Otherwise, I really hope you got some value out of this. I know I did. And hopefully you guys are enjoying Corporate Startup Lab Forum. Thanks
Thank
to all
you,
our
everybody.
panelists.
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Priscilla, Mary Beth, and everyone there. Thank you.